I've done quite a few things, just cleaning up the engine bay and getting all the wiring sorted. So wrapped all the wire that was showing in loom and all electrical tape, and just tidying them against the the firewall and the sides of the bay here. And then I also had these heater core hose brackets. There's little plastic and they're easy. If you undo these and you pull them back just a little bit too far, they'll snap at the bottom. I had some on my parts car outside, so I replaced those. These were just like kind of dangling and hiding because they were broken on my other ones. So those back in makes that look a hell of a lot better. One of the major things I took the most time on was I made this power distribution block with my mill, just a block of aluminum, and essentially that's just going to allow me to drill and tap anywhere on this block. I was actually a little skeptical at first because I designed this to where it's being held down by nylon bolts, so it obviously doesn't, this is going to be power, so you don't want it to ground into the car. And nylon washers underneath to space it up, and it's a good 1/4 inch spacing air gap between the chassis and the car, or the chassis and the block. And these, I went to go overkill with these 4 bolts, and it surprisingly held a lot better than I thought it was going to. Like, I was still kind of like, I don't know, it might break, and that is not good. But this seriously is a lot stronger than I thought it was, and it's gonna work awesome. That was just about it. Relocating the power and tightening all that up in that corner, the looming in the back, and now we're just about ready to put this thing in. G-Spec Performance, 6-speed flywheel, aluminum, lightweight. It's about 11 pounds. We're kind of, out of the budget motor side. This is more of a, this clutch that I'm gonna be using, SR20DE+T, that's the part number, but it's a stage 5, which is about 500 foot-pounds of torque, which is absolute overkill. This will probably produce 300 off the dyno. I drag raced a stage 3. This used to have a stage 3 in it, and that was 350 foot-pounds, 390-ish, like ballpark, 350, 390. And I tried to do a 4th gear burnout with slicks, and it did not work at all. It totally roasted it. I wish I could show you a video, but I showed you what the clutch looks like, but I tossed it. It rainbowed the whole thing, and it ended up just slipping and, seized the flywheel to the clutch. And so even though the motor only produced 300 foot-pounds, a 390 foot-pound clutch did not like a 4th gear burnout, even in the water box. So if I ever do have some fun with this car and want to do some harder launches, burnouts in a higher gear, that's why we're going with this big stage 5 clutch, is so it can take some burnouts, and it'll be just fine. I've made some very good progress on the Nissan. It is like 80% done. All of yesterday, installed essentially all of the rear wiring, got everything hooked up underneath the intake manifold, and then refaced the manifold flange, and then also I faced the flat side of the V-band outlet on the manifold too, because I noticed that it was kind of warped. Not sure how, but it was. I mean, along with the manifold flange, it's aluminum, so it warped a little bit. But throttle body, charge pipe, throttle cable, the map reference, my fuel pressure regulator reference, the fuel line on this side, the return line. I'm gonna leave the feed line unhooked for now, just so that when it comes time to start the car, it's been sitting since October. I just want to cycle the key a couple of times to, one, make sure that it flushes out any debris that's fallen into that line, and then two, just to get whatever stagnant green yellow fuel in the line that's been that might be bad, and just cycle it through and make sure that the gas looks good before I hook it up. The cam angle sensor, got that wiring all tidied with the coil packs, and last night at about, well, this morning at about 12:40 in the morning, before I went to bed, installed the turbo and all the lines. Now, what I'm doing right now is, I had an issue in the last build where I have what they call heat sink bungs. Now, what this does, it essentially lets only a little bit of the sensor stick out into the tube, instead of normally a normal O2 sensor bung is about half of this length, and a lot more of the sensor, about halfway, sticks into the tube. So essentially, if you just have a lot of heat going to the sensor, like if it's too close, if you have to make it too close to the turbo, or you're just really aggressive with anti-lag, what this does is it hides it inside the bung, so direct heat and the flames or the anti-lag combustion, or just, you know, the exhaust gases, it keeps it cooler and doesn't overheat it. I have one of these heat sinks, but at the 18 inches, and I think what's happening is it's the correct placement, but because I have one of these heat sink bungs, it's too cold and it needs to warm up. Hence, once it gets to operating temperature and the exhaust gets hot enough, and then I start driving, it starts reading again. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a heatsink bung, but put it right here to see if that will solve that problem. Okay. All the fluids are in. Engine oil, coolant, and the gear oil is all in. I just got to put the power steering fluid left, or I just put the power steering fluid in the reservoir, and then, well, actually, what I'm gonna do right now is I got a jar on there, and I'm gonna turn the power on, make sure nothing fucking shorts out, and then turn the key and cycle the fuel pump and make sure that's working and see what fuel comes out. Power's on. I don't see anything. Look good so far. That filled up quick. It actually looks really good. No water in the fuel, and I don't see any bits coming out. And all I gotta do that's left is to change. So the motor that I had in before this was a built 8 to 5 to 1 comp ratio, and so all I need to do is change the base timing to 15, because on 8 to 5 it likes to run at 20. So we're gonna run it a little bit sooner, or a little bit later, actually, my bad, later, and then we'll leave the fuel map the same and see if this thing starts. It'll probably be rich, but I at least want to change the timing. That's the important part, and then we can change the fuel map from there. First start. Here we go. First start. She's running. We have a couple issues. We got a small coolant leak on one of the turbo lines, and then I think my AFR sensor might be fucked, or my wideband. It's not reading right now. Maybe it needs to warm up, but it's still warming up right now. And then bleeding the power steering. She's running super smooth right now. Super smooth. Had to change the tune a little bit, but it wasn't actually much different compared to the last motor. But everything's looking good. It's idling super nice. The first start went really good, except for just a small coolant leak that surprisingly fixed itself, and then my AFR sensor decided to shit out. So hopefully I'm about to start it again, and I just finished installing a brand new Bosch 4.9 LSU sensor, so we should be good to go. I changed the original O2, so the original wideband sensor was about 18 inches down the down, like, after the turbo on the downpipe, like how AEM actually tells you to do it. However, I think because I had a special heatsink bung that I installed, and I think with a heatsink bung, having it down there, it was too cold, and so they kept failing because they weren't hot enough. So I used the heatsink again, the heatsink bung, but I put it like right at the outlet on the turbo. So I think it should be hot enough now, and we should be good. But I know it'll work right now because I put a brand new sensor in. But as we get farther into this, and I've had the car for a couple months running, we can come back to that issue. So I'm about to start it and take a look at it. Yeah, she's working good right now. Sensor fired right up.